I am on a quest to play every Nintendo 64 game ever. Today, we visit the battlefield in the action-packed, third-person shooter Army Men Sarges Heroes. I finally am able to play this game. I had shipping issues on eBay getting this game. I had to resort to more primal activities. No more. It's game time. The 90s had so many classic war movies. Saving Private Ryan, Braveheart, even Forrest Gump. With Army Men Sarges Heroes releasing at the end of the decade in 1999, surely these films would inspire epic action sequences, unforgettable characters, and an emotional narrative that could move even a plastic man to tears.
I'm with you, man. I'm just itching to lay down some bazooka blues on these tan turkeys.
So the writers just didn't go to the theater that decade. Army Men Sarges Heroes is the first entry in the Army Men franchise on the Nintendo 64. Real combat, plastic men. This sounds like a pretty sexy slogan for a toy. The box art and the slogan was enough to interest 6-year-old me at Blockbuster. That and the Army Men on the box tickled my love for Toy Story and Small Soldiers. But I knew I wouldn't be able to rent it because of its T rating. My dad wouldn't even let me play Ogre Battle 64 because he wanted me to grow up to not be violent or something. Well, joke's on you, Dad! I'm not quite sure why this game is rated T. Sure, there are guns and shooting and it's war and people are dying, but they're all toys. If it released today, it would probably get an E10 plus rating. This game is all about being a green army man named Sarge and taking down the tan army men. You know, racism. The player gets the opportunity to roam large battlefields, save comrades, and infiltrate military bases. That's about the extent of the objectives. While the missions aren't as extravagant as the 90s war movies, there is some genuine fun to have here, once you grasp the controls. The concept of this game is great. Toy soldiers in place of real soldiers in a silly environment, awesome. The execution though? Well, it's a mess. And for one specific reason, the camera. The camera issue is that it just does not move well. It doesn't move fast, it's slow, and you cannot control it. Because of this, the game doesn't feel like a war movie, it feels like a Wes Anderson film. I hate to start reviews off pretty negatively, but I just finished this game and I just really want to punch the camera. Let's look at other 3D games at the time. While this is kind of an unfair comparison, let's take a gander at Super Mario 64. You know, the king of 3D at the time. In Mario 64, you can adjust the camera by using the 4 tiny yellow gumdrops on your controller. It's not the best camera, but it's sure as hell functional. This was a major breakthrough in gaming. But, as Sarge's Heroes demonstrates, not all developers picked up on this. Instead of utilizing the C buttons for a camera, the C buttons revolve around crouching and going prone. Actions that I did maybe 1 or 2 times in the entire campaign. It's truly unnecessary unless you're actually trying to not get caught on stealth missions, even though they are virtually impossible. Crouching and going prone are also mapped to the D-pad. This is a game that actually utilized the D-pad on the N64 controller. This right here is a very rare breed. They could have just stuck the optional movement controls on the D-pad and camera controls on the C buttons, or vice versa. I don't care, I am willing to hold the controller like it was intended if it means I get to control the camera. The camera just follows the player around. If you look one direction, it slowly, and I mean slowly, turns to your new point of view. Camera's pointing this way, right? You turn, and it will slowly turn. Even more, you have to go all the way around. Can't get here, it takes forever. Say you're in the middle of a really intense firefight, and you have to turn to the left to shoot some reinforcements that are coming in hot. Slam the brakes, because you have to wait for the camera to adjust. Or you can speed up the camera by aiming down the sights, but the fact that I actually have to do that to move the camera is frustrating. I know this was the early days of 3D gaming, and I'm sure this is just the beginning of awful camera controls in N64 games, but holy moly guacamole casserole, this is bad! I could be playing Metroid Prime 2 instead of this, but here I am. Anyway, this game's pretty alright. Camera controls aside, I wholeheartedly enjoyed the game. The maps are designed nicely, maybe a little too big. The variety of weapons available are fun and placed in convenient areas. The jumping mechanic is clunky, but at least it works better than the camera. Not by much, but it works. In battles, jumping is useful to dodge bullets and makes you faster, I guess. That's all you really need jumping for in the first 75% of the game, as most maps are focused on running around on the ground. But whoo doggy, I hope you know how to jump, because in the final quarter of the game, it's all about platforming. Want precise jumps? Not here. Want accurate button timing to jump? Try again. I don't know what mindset the developers were in when they decided to change this game from a third-person shooter to a 3D platformer. Maybe the lead designer of this game played Super Mario 64 during development and halted the process to change it to be more like that. But it turned into a mess and then shit out this game. I really don't have a problem with this game up until it turns into a 3D platformer out of nowhere. And I know I keep reassuring you that I did have some fun with this game. I'm saying that a lot because I'm trying to convince myself that this game wouldn't be so bad in 1999. This part of the game is like biting into an onion. Why would anyone want that or do that? My largest hurdle in this game was the stupid kitchen level. It was harder than the final level. I hate that. Why does a third-person shooter that was designed to primarily be a third-person shooter have platforming levels? This isn't Ratchet & Clank. This is Army Men. This is a military game. And who has this many cereal boxes at once? If I were to enlist into the army right now, I would expect some platforming levels and kitchens full of cereal boxes. It also doesn't help when there are so many models in the level that the frames per second is lower than Star Fox for the Super Nintendo, which is the worst feedback a game could receive. I normally don't rag on the frames per second in games, but when it impedes progress, it has to be discussed. Okay, so beyond the platforming, beyond the camera, beyond the often horrible performance, it's a pretty decent game for the time. It's exactly what I would expect out of a 90s third-person shooter. It harkened me back to some GameCube third-person shooters like Metal Arms, Freedom Fighters, and Desert Storm. Whenever you don't need to jump on cereal boxes, this game's pretty solid. The story, on the other hand, whew. So the story follows Sarge, our hero in green, and his mission is to stop the tan men from killing all the green men, I guess. They never really specified what the ultimate goal is between these two factions, and they're just fighting for no reason besides skin color, which I mean is a good enough theme in games. The tans are led by General Plastro, who is just Fidel Castro. The greens are led by Colonel Grimm, and he has a daughter, Vicky. I'm not really sure what team she's on. Like, honestly, she's both tan and green. Is she supposed to be the one to bring balance to the Force? The plot revolves around Mr. Plastro using portals to transport super weapons to defeat the Greens. You find out these portals lead to different locations in a house, like a garden and a bathroom. And then you find out the super weapons are just like giant Power Ranger Megazord-like toys. Vicky gets kidnapped because she's a woman in the 90s, so of course she does. Misogyny ensues. Vicky and Plastro make plastic love.
I'll do anything I can help you. We can win this war together, wink wink.
Guard, take her to my office. Let's negotiate. Yes, this is definitely sexual.
You save Vicky. Plastro gets eaten by a dog. You blow up the portals. The end. It's a very thrilling story with completely original writing.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Up, and away!
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Why couldn't you be more inspired by the movies you're quoting? I took some time to look into this game and its community. Supposedly this was the game that ruined the series in the eyes of veterans. It became too silly and kid-friendly, and also gave Sarge a character, which was a big no-no for some reason. I'm not sure how all of that ruins the franchise about plastic soldiers, but to each their own, I guess. This argument kinda reminds me of Zelda fans' initial response to Wind Waker, when in actuality it's a phenomenal game. God, I love Wind Waker. But there's only one thing better than Wind Waker: spawn camping. I love spawn camping. It's so great, it's the best part of playing any game online. It's not toxic at all. Thank goodness for this game's multiplayer, because I can do it a lot. The multiplayer in Sarge's Heroes is stupidly unbalanced, and I feel bad for any young person that played this with an older sibling, because they probably got spawn camped and mercilessly destroyed. At least that's what my older brother did to me whenever we played games together, and then I would bite him out of anger. That's normal, I swear. The multiplayer offers plenty of maps from the story mode, all of which are pretty similar, a square map with 4 spawn points, but the battles feel like a push to see who can spawn camp each other first. It's not very fun. At least they have a pretty good song that's playing in the multiplayer mode. Can't really say the same for the rest of the game. The music in this game kind of all blends together. I listened to the whole soundtrack after I beat it, and I honestly couldn't tell when the songs changed. They're all so crazy similar, save for a few. It's like listening to AC/DC. The main theme of the game is actually pretty good. Unfortunately, audio balancing ruins it for me. At the end of every single mission, when you get to your final objective, the main theme blasts at ungodly volume levels. How was this not caught in testing? It's all military battlefield music. You know, there's drums, there's the intensity, and then there's the reggae? This threw me off when I first heard this in the game. We're in the middle of a giant battle with tanks, helicopters, and soldiers dying all over in a garden. And then this reggae casually begins playing. Am I listening to Bob Marley? It's funny that I mentioned Bob Marley, because when I finished this game, I went to listen to some Bob Marley so I could make a really quality joke for this video, and this is the first song I listened to. And this is the song in the garden. But that's not all. And let's not forget about this. So the game just casually takes these songs and puts them in the console's sound font. I mean, they're all great songs, but come on! To be fair, many other games did this back in the 90s. Just look at Earthbound. It's considered one of the greatest RPGs in history. But you know. This game is fine. Sarge's Heroes is fine. The soundtrack is fine. The gameplay is fine. The story is fine. Everything is fine. 5.3 out of 10. It's a tad better than average because I could see myself having fun with this in the 90s, considering what controls were like back then. But decades later, this game does not hold up. This is one of the most dated games I have ever played. The abysmal camera, the 2 frames per second issues, and the miserable platforming. This game is a mess and should not be touched in this day and age. 1.6 out of 10. I just hope the other Army Men games on the N64 are better, but I won't know that for a long time. Anyway, don't hate each other because of skin color. Racism is not cool.
That'd be great for the ending though. If I get the credits, like, alright, let's go.